3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running.
There is no other institution that has the ability uniquely
Without a heritage, every generation starts over.
Ask not
to remind the current regime
what your country.
We, the people, tell the government what it is allowed to do.
to get back in their box and stay there.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
From the Heritage Foundation, this is Heritage Explains.
Welcome back to Heritage Explains. I'm Doug Blair, filling in for Mark Guiney. New York Times journalist James Reston once quipped that this is the devilish thing about foreign affairs. They are foreign, and they do not always conform to our whim. Never have those words been truer than now. The world is a very dangerous place at the moment. We're still engaged in Iran, with little sign of things improving. China looms large in Asia, although we have abruptly stopped engaging with regional ally South Korea on military drills. And the Ukraine-Russia war continues to rage, all while America's defensive capabilities are under increased scrutiny. It's a lot to take in, but we think we have just the guy to break it down. Bob Peters is the director for the Heritage Foundation's Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for National Security. He is here to walk us through the dire threats facing the nation from abroad. Our interview next. Bob Peters, director for the Heritage Foundation, Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for National Security. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Let's start off with an overview. If you have to give a brief foreign affairs situation report, what are the biggest threats facing the United States right now?
Well, the biggest threat is the People's Republic of China. I mean, they're the fastest growing military power on the planet. They have a larger Navy than the U.S. Navy at this point. They're building fifth generation fighters faster than we are. They have the world's second largest concentration of missiles, and they're the fastest growing nuclear power on the planet. You know, by the way, earlier this year, their foreign minister threatened to cut off the head of the prime minister of Japan, and they constantly engage in threatening actions against their neighbors, many of whom are U.S. treaty allies, such as Japan or the Philippines or South Korea. And so the biggest threat, without question, is the People's Republic. Other nations are a threat, such as Russia, such as Iran, such as North Korea. But head and shoulders above the rest, it is China.
Let's begin with China then. It sounded like we are not in a good position vis-a-vis China. They have bigger, I believe you mentioned a bigger Navy, lots of bigger weapon stockpiles. If they were to move against an ally like Japan or Taiwan, for example, tomorrow, would we be able to respond?
Well, it depends on the scenario. So if they move against Japan, we would be able to, I'm confident that we would be able to destroy their naval forces before they're able to touch down on some of the home islands of Japan. We still have relatively good anti-ship capabilities, and the Japanese Navy is very strong. So I feel confident that we can defend the home islands of Japan. It's different for Taiwan. Taiwan is closer to the mainland of China than Miami is to Cuba. And so you're looking at a flight time of about half an hour, 45 minutes from mainland of China to Taiwan, and only about 3 hours steam time to the shores of off the coast of Taipei. So that would be a hard-pressed thing. In many ways, our strategic dilemma is akin to that of the British Empire in 1938. Incredibly powerful, great Navy, great Army, but we have priorities and obligations throughout the world. And so we're unable to concentrate our military forces in any one particular part of the world. Our adversaries don't have that problem. They're able to concentrate their firepower in one particular place. There's a 21-day steam time from the coast of California to Guam. And so they could be there in hours and we would be there in weeks. And so this is the fundamental dilemma facing the United States, is how do we deter, which is the goal. The goal is not to go to war with China. The goal is to deter that war from breaking out in the first place. But to do that, you have to credibly present military force that can decisively defeat any aggressive actions by the People's Republic. And that's the dilemma that we face. How do we get that mass there quick enough?
Well, given that deterrence strategy, we have argued, the Heritage Foundation has argued for a stronger security relationship with our Asia-Pacific allies, like the aforementioned South Korea and Japan, to blunt Chinese aggression. In the news recently, the Trump administration canceled a major joint amphibious exercise with South Korea that was scheduled for this September. What happened here, and is this as big of a deal as the media is making it out to be?
Well, I mean, South Korea has been our ally since the 1950s. They have stood shoulder to shoulder with us across many different wars, Vietnam, Persian Gulf Wars, Iraq, Afghanistan. They're terrific allies. If more countries in the world had a defense posture similar to South Korea, we would be in a much better place. I understand that President Trump wants to have relations with North Korea that we can get to denuclearization talks. I would love to see North Korea denuclearized. And I understand that we need some additional assistance vis-a-vis Iran. But we need to take a long view and make sure that what we're doing is best for the United States and best for our sustained alliance with South Korea, which is in American interest.
So this would be something we should probably go back on. We should re-engage with this particular amphibious exercise.
I am confident that we will continue to engage in long-term, meaningful exercising and training efforts with South Korea, as we have done so for decades.
On a slightly different note, what role does American AI and chip production play in a future conflict with, or a potential conflict with China, especially considering the ongoing debate in America around data centers? Where does that play in?
AI is not going away. And so we can have wonderful debates within the United States about what is the role and function of AI data centers and where should it go? What's the implications for American jobs and families? Those are important debates to have. But even if we banned every AI data center in the United States, that would have zero impact on what China's doing with AI in their own country. There are real applications for AI. It can help with targeting. It can help with understanding the enemy's order of battle. It can help with developing scenarios in which the adversaries may try to get advantage over the United States. It can help us think about how we could get advantage over them. So us walking away from AI and all the potential help it can provide in thinking through how we apply military power, not deciding when or how, but helping the humans make those decisions. If we unilaterally disarm, that's only going to undercut our position in the world.
Let's move on to another foreign conflict. As I mentioned in my intro, we are in the middle of quite a few of them. Iran. What is the situation right now in Iran, and how close are we, if we are close at all, to an end to hostilities?
Well, it's a great question. Let's just start off on first things. We have utterly demolished the Iranian military. Like, to be very clear, we have decapitated their senior military command. We have just decimated their ballistic missile and their drone program. We have rebelized their nuclear program. It's going to take them 20 years to rebuild their nuclear program to where it was before the war began. If this was a football game, the score would be 99-0 because they have put very little cost on us from a military perspective. Now, the question is how does the war end? That is still up in the air. We support the free flow of navigation and goods and services across international waterways, which the Strait of Hormuz is. Iran does not have the right to close that strait. The question is how can we compel them to stop trying to close the Strait of Hormuz, which is a violation of international law? Secretary Bassant announced yesterday the D-Day of economic sanctions against Iran. We'll see how that plays out. All indicators are that Iran's economy is at about 90% inflation. They're almost out of petroleum reserves, and their economy was in a very weak place before Operation Epic Fury began. So it may very well be that this war ends not with a bomb going off, but by the Iranian economy imploding.
Given that the threat that Heritage has presented around Iran is its nuclear ambition, is this something we should be concerned about if the economy goes belly up? There are still resources out there that Iran could potentially produce a nuclear weapon. Is this war the best way to manage that? Will there be concerns if the economy implodes? And how should America look at deterring Iranian's nuclear program?
So let's be very clear. So Iran does not have a nuclear device today. They do not have fissile material. They have enriched uranium. That is a step away from being weapons grade, but that is not a weapons pit that would go inside a nuclear warhead, much less a constituted warhead itself, much less something that can go on the tip of a ballistic missile. So it's not like if Iran completely goes belly up, we're going to start seeing New York and Chicago go up in mushroom clouds. However, we do need to secure that material, whether that's through some type of international inspections regime or American forces going in there. with some type of post-Islamic Republic government in which we go in there and we remove that material and safeguard it, or even if we go in there and forcibly extract that material. Those are all options. But look, the Islamic Republic does not get to keep that material. It does not.
We just spoke about the Chinese before this. Do the Russians and Chinese have any role to play in this conflict? Have they been engaged in this particular conflict?
No, they haven't. So you've seen some Iranian support for Russia's war in Ukraine in the form of providing drones, but you actually haven't seen Russia or really China lift a finger to assist Iran. I mean, you saw something similar play out in Venezuela, in which they talked about their great friendship with the Maduro government. They did nothing. They've done very little for Iran. I would say that if you're looking for a strong ally, Russia and China are not constant partners. I would not be looking to them as an ally because they've done very little to help their allies.
Well, it seems like a good segue into Russia and Ukraine, which is obviously the other international conflict we're going on. Let's get another sky-high view here. What is the current strategic reality of the Russian-Ukrainian war? There's some people who claim that Ukraine is going to win this thing tomorrow. There's some people who claim that Russia is basically done and that they are going to lose if we just keep funding them. What is the reality?
The reality is that both sides are bleeding out and both sides are expending an enormous amount of resources and treasure and combat material and manpower for very little gain. What you're seeing is very minimal movements on the battlefield. You're not seeing large-scale maneuvers going on in a war that's now, I believe, longer than what World War I was. And so the reality is that this war is slogging on in a way that looks very much like the Western Front in France, high casualties for low gains on both sides, and there's no end in sight. Now, maybe there will be some type of peace deal, but the Russians have shown no indication that they want to engage in any such conversations.
Obviously, Ukraine has a specific vision. They want the territory in the Donbass back and the Crimea. Russia obviously has its own strategic aims. What does a successful outcome for American interests in Ukraine look like?
The most important thing for the United States is that Russia does not pose a material threat to European peace and security. And in particular, we're talking about our NATO allies. We're a member of NATO. We want to see Ukraine succeed. We want to see Ukraine defend its sovereign territory. That is any nation's right. But Ukraine is not an American ally. It's not part of NATO. But Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, Poland, so forth, they are. And so success is a Russian military that is unable to pose a credible threat to America's allies in Europe.
Speaking of Europe, where does the idea of a stronger Europe fit into this equation? Obviously, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, has repeatedly expressed desire for a EU army. Is that something America should support?
There's not going to be an EU army. I mean, there is no actors really outside of Brussels and Paris that support an EU army. So that's just simply not going to happen anytime in the foreseeable future. Europe already has a credible military in the form of the NATO alliance. And a strong NATO is good for the United States. A strong European conventional military capability is good for the United States. Look, Europe's economy is 10 times that of Russia. Its population is 3 times that of Russia. Europe can easily deter Russian aggression if it puts its mind to it. And I think we're seeing positive signs emerging from Europe that they are rebuilding their militaries. They're expanding. I think Germany is on the right path. Poland's on the right path. Finland, the Baltics, Sweden. Even France is doing some good things. And even the UK is doing some good things. This is all welcome. And once Europe is able to do that and deter Russian aggression, that enables us to focus on other priorities, such as deterring Chinese aggression, such as dealing with narco-terrorists and human migration problems.
Focusing back on the American response to a lot of these foreign crises, a lot of these foreign conflicts, one of your major areas in particular of expertise is nuclear strategy. So where do we stand on the nuclear deterrent as part of the larger equation of force deterrent vis-a-vis our enemies like China and Russia?
Sure. We have the oldest nuclear arsenal in the world. The newest weapon that we have that's deployed is at this point 37 years old, which I think is almost the age of the average American. That's the newest one. Many weapons are decades older. The ICBM, the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, was meant to be retired in 1988. It's supposed to stay in service until 2050. Some of the air-launched cruise missiles that we have were supposed to be retired when Ronald Reagan was president. They're still in service. It's not great. Russia has completed its nuclear modernization program. China is sprinting as fast as they can. They are far outstripping our ability to build nuclear weapons. And so in many ways, our arsenal is like a 1975 Cadillac that we inherited from our grandfathers. It's still in fine condition, but it's just sitting there in the garage. And maybe we've updated, we put a new battery in, we've changed the tires and the brakes. But, our adversaries are driving around in Teslas and Mercedes and things like that. And we've got this 1975 Cadillac in the garage. It's time for us to get a modern arsenal. We're trying to do that, but it's not going well.
What does that look like?
So modern arsenal means new ICBMs, new warheads, new ballistic missile submarines, all of which we're building. But it also means building theater nuclear capabilities. And so at the end of the Cold War, we had thousands of nuclear weapons deployed in Europe and East Asia. And that was meant to deter conventional aggression, theater aggression. It wasn't really meant to deter attack against American homeland, but it helped keep a lid on acts of aggression overseas amongst our allies by our adversaries. We got rid of all that stuff. I mean, we have a small number in Europe, but by and large, we got rid of all that stuff. And so what we actually need is some capability to deter low-level nuclear threats. I say low-level. I'm talking about weapons about roughly the size of what destroyed Hiroshima at the end of World War II. Those are the weapon systems that our adversaries are investing in and then putting on theater range missiles that can target American bases and allied bases. That's really what we need to build, are capabilities and systems that can convince our adversaries that they cannot escalate their way out of a conflict.
Two-part question for you. We spoke a little bit about how our stockpile nuclearly is out of date. There's also concern that our missile inventories are significantly depleted as a result of our conflict with Iran. How important is it for America to reinvigorate domestic production capability of our defense industry to bolster supplies? And where does the nuclear deterrent fit within that framework?
I am a full-throated supporter of modernizing our nuclear deterrent. However, I think it's actually more important that we get the conventional piece right. I cannot stress enough that we need more long-range precision fires, more Tomahawk cruise missiles, more JASSM cruise missiles, more missile interceptors that goes in things like Patriot batteries and THAAD batteries, missile defenses. What we've seen is an enormous reliance upon offensive strike missiles by the Russians, by the Iranians. We see the massive stockpiles that the Chinese are building. This is going to require thousands of missile interceptors in the Western Pacific alone, much less Europe and in the Middle East again. We need to quadruple or more our annual production rate of both offensive long-range fires and also defensive missile interceptors. And I think we're moving in the right direction, but boy, howdy, is it slow. We really need to be moving with purpose.
One final question for you. Your colleague, Brent Sadler, recently spoke with my colleagues, Dan West and Chip Wyatt, on the essential nature of maritime strength in the broader U.S. deterrence strategy for our foes. Where does maritime defense fit within the larger American framework? We spoke a little bit about it, but where does it fit in the larger picture?
It's critically important. I mean, as I said, it's a 21-day steam time from the coast of California into theater. Any fight with China is going to be dominated by operations at sea. The problem is that the American Navy is getting smaller rather than getting larger. Despite Congress writing into law that the Navy has to expand the number of surface combatants, the Navy is actually building fewer ships. Contractors are building slower. We're not building enough submarines. It's taking too long to build aircraft carriers. It's taking too long for the Navy to identify the next generation fighter to go on those new aircraft carriers. And so there's the American shipbuilding industry is in a pretty bad state. It's I talked about the need to build more missiles. The shipbuilding industry is in such a bad shape. I almost wonder, this is just personal view, if we need to start investing less in maritime capabilities and more in air power because of the Navy's seeming inability to build a surface fleet that can challenge the PLA. What we have is qualitatively better, but at a certain point, quantity has a quality all of its own, and it seems that's where China's going to. And so I'm becoming increasingly pessimistic about our ability to really challenge China on the high seas. Again, not Heritage position, my personal view. Brent, for him, I have great respect, may see things a bit differently, but we may need to lean into American air power, which is our comparative advantage, as opposed to maritime power, if the Navy is unable to actually field a credible surface fleet.
Seems like there's a lot of work to be done, but Bob Peters, Director for the Heritage Foundation's Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for National Security, very much appreciate your time and your insight.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you to Bob Peters, Director for the Heritage Foundation's Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for National Security, for joining me today. And as always, thank you to you for tuning in to Heritage Explains. Feel free to drop thoughts, questions, or suggestions at heritageexplains@heritage.org. Until next time, as always, this has been Heritage Explains.
Heritage Explains is brought to you by more than 500,000 members of the Heritage Foundation. It's written and produced by Mark Guiney, Lauren Evans, and John Pop.